Hello everybody, how you doing? So this is a live today that I'm going to be spending a bit of time talking about why you should perhaps consider a video podcast. Now, before I get started, I'm just going to check all of my details out and just make sure I am live in the right places and share via. Let's share this into the right place if I can. Bear with me one moment and I will be share more options. So, okay, fine. We'll go with that. So, good morning, everybody. Right. So, why a video podcast? So, you'll have noticed, maybe, well, you might have noticed, you might not have noticed, that over the last sort of few months, I have been talking much more sort of assiduously and openly about the fact that we've now properly launched the podcasting production agency that we've got called Podforge. And the rationale behind Podforge was that we were doing a lot of this kind of activity already. So creating content for people with a sort of a video first approach, and then repurposing. So we kind of crystallized the methodology and took it and turned it into something really quite exciting. So I started talking the other day in the free group that we've got, which is available to everybody if you fancy coming and joining. It is called Launch, Sustain and Grow Your Video Podcast. We started talking about this idea of taking a video first approach to creating a podcast. And what do I mean by that? Essentially, what I mean is recording a video podcast and repurposing it into the audio version of the podcast and then all the other pieces of content. So very often people just think of podcasting as being an audio only format, but actually that sort of that thinking somewhat limits the scope of what can be achieved and what can be gained and the benefits you can get from thinking about it in a slightly more expansive way. So I'm going to set out some of the thinking here. Well, first of all, I'm going to ask you how you feel about content creation. And I kind of know the answer to this because I feel it myself. If you are, and you can be a business of any size, I've had these conversations with people who are solo entrepreneur startups and then also team members of large, very large organizations. The pressure to create content for multiple platforms in multiple formats at volume is really, really intense. We feel like we have to fill up our streams with valuable content. And the truth is, if we want to grab people's attention, if we want to share our knowledge, if we want to establish ourselves as experts in our field, we kind of do. We have to be doing that. And I always say, whenever I get back doing my regular lives, I see and repurposing that live content, I always see an uptick in the leads we generate. Because the truth is, that's how it works. If people see you and they know what you are doing and they know what your offer is, you will be more likely to find the right people at the right time. And doing that sounds, it sounds so obvious, doesn't it? But actually, it doesn't. It doesn't really. If it were that obvious, we would feel kind of, we would feel far better about it, I think, because it's far easier to sustain and grow stuff when you're not feeling, frankly, a bit burnt out. And you can be part of a big team and feel burnt out with content creation, or you can be doing it yourself and definitely feel like you're kind of swimming upstream sometimes. So we at Podforge wanted to take all the knowledge and processes and expertise that we'd developed and gained over the last, well, frankly, 20 plus years of doing this, and turn that kind of idea of the podcast into something that is an engine for all your content. And when I say all, I mean sort of, you know, your video podcast, your audio version of the podcast, your written content. So blogs can come out of this. You've got images, you've got quote carousels, you've got all sorts of things that come out of this process. And that is a really amazing thing to sort of realize that you can do. One video recording. So we do basically what Podforge does is we manage and launch people's podcasts. So we help people take their podcast from idea to launch and then sustain it with weekly episodes and all of that content creation that happens around that episode. So, for example, an episode goes out, you know, on Wednesday morning. Out of that comes, obviously, we have the full length video version, the full length audio version. We've got written posts for LinkedIn and Facebook. We've got written posts for short form content platforms like Threads or Twitter or X. Sorry, keep calling it Twitter. We've got images for Instagram. We've got short form videos for TikTok, Reels, YouTube Shorts. All this stuff comes out of this video this edited video episode. And the wonderful truth of this is that for you as the content creator, if you are spending time creating a piece of long form content, that can be then repurposed into all sorts of different things. And I think this is going to get more important for a few different reasons. And part of that is to do with the whole growth of AI. I think what we're going to see is and I've said this many times before over the last sort of 2 years, I think we're going to see a diminishing of kind of trust in content. So things where you are yourself and doing it sort of in the long form way is really powerful. As Ruth says here, so Ruth Templeton says, my problem is my busy brain has ideas tripping over themselves that I end up frozen and overwhelmed. Yeah, I mean that's it. I mean that is part, I think, of the content burnout thing. You know, you feel this pressure to create so strongly, and it turns into, you know, overwhelm and paralysis, I think. And having that methodology to follow is really powerful. One that takes you from, you know, essentially what I advocate is people, once you've identified the topic of your podcast and understand how to approach each episode, so you know, format and something that's repeatable, essentially all you're doing is having interesting conversations with people that, you know, that either, you know, so say, for example, if you went for an interview style podcast, all you're doing is talking to people that you're interested in talking to, having a structured conversation with that person. And that's easy. That's an easy thing to do. That's a fun thing to do. You know, you don't have to worry about that, because it's something you probably enjoy doing anyway. So we try and advocate sort of batch recording. So you might sort of identify a day to do maybe 2 or 3 podcasts in. So you know, that's sort of putting aside maybe an hour and a half a week. So if you've spent an hour and a half a week recording 2 episodes of a podcast, that means you're always going to be 1 episode. If you do that over the course of the month, you'll have 4 episodes in hand on average and 4 episodes in the bank. So if you did that for 1 month, you'd not only have a full episode every week of like a sort of 25-minute, 30-minute conversation, 45-minute conversation, whatever it is, you'd also have the next month done as well. So that going forward, you're always banking up content. And that's really important because that approach does 2 things. One, it's feeding the machine already. So you're always having a weekly episode. But 2, you're always building up an ever-growing buffer. And growing that buffer means that you don't have to worry about content creation. That takes the pressure off, because what then happens, so if you were a Podforge client, we would have got you to that point where we've helped you, we've mentored you, got you so you're comfortable doing the recordings. You're doing the recordings virtually. I mean, you can do them in person, but most people are very, very happy to do it virtually as well. So in fact, all of our clients are using Zoom or Riverside, which are great platforms. So you can be recording that content and then just dropping it in a folder and handing it over to us. And then what then happens is that we do the editing, we do the uploading, we create the show notes, we create all that additional content, so that from that hour and a half of recording time each week, you've got the episode for that week or the next week, ideally. We strongly advocate not recording the episodes on the week they go out, because nobody likes that. That's always a bit stressful. Getting stuff recorded in advance means that you've got the content plan, you've got the content, you can get it scheduled so it goes up and out at the right time, so the right people are seeing it at the right time. It's optimized. There are show notes, there are transcripts. All these things are available and ready. Now, you can do all this yourself, and it makes life a lot easier because there are lots of systems that you can now use and leverage to make the process a lot easier. So lots of AI tools. We've built our own AI tools and systems out which support our podcasters at Podforge, and so we're able to produce content, good quality content at scale, that is that actually is really really doing a lot of heavy lifting for people. I'm just going to check to see if I've missed any messages from folks, which I probably have. Seemingly. Let's go over to the group. I realise I'm not actually streaming this on the Podforge page. Oh well, it's a bit silly, isn't it? No, it's all good. There we go. Anyway, so having a sort of strategic approach to your content, which is driven at the heart of it by this engine of your video podcast, can be incredibly powerful. So I'd urge you, think about your industry. Think about the people you'd love to talk to. Because what a podcast allows you to do is talk to people that you maybe, frankly, would love to work with, but instead of pitching them with your work, what you're getting to do is say, I'd love to interview for my podcast. And it's a very flattering thing to do. And I use, I could use any of the podcasts that we have that we're managing at the moment as an example, but a really great one is Liz Allen's podcast Electric Evolution. She's now at sort of 120-ish episodes, and of those interviews, so that's like 120 plus interviews. It is really impressive, the the people she's got on the podcast. She's been doing this now for 2 years, and she has established herself as a powerful and meaningful voice in her industry, and she is getting work in that industry as a result of it, which she wasn't getting before. So that podcast has been, and I'll be clear, it is a niche podcast. It is a very niche podcast, but it has been targeted precisely at the area that she wants to work in. So she's serving the audience, and that audience is made up of people that she would love to work with. It's genius. So you could do that. You find your area, you interview people within that space, you build connections with people. Not only are you serving that audience really well with relevant, useful, interesting, entertaining information, you're also building connections and authority within that space in a way that doesn't feel spammy or sleazy. And that's really exciting. So I'll leave that with you now. Have a think on that. Let it percolate. If you are listening to this and thinking, I'd love to do it, well, the good news is with Podforge, we have 5 spots available. No, we have 4 spots, not 5. We've had one go already. We have 4 spots available. And these are still at the launch price of £450 a month. So it is bonkers cheap. We're not going to be doing this for much longer. So it's £450 a month. Bargain. It will not be that forever. And that's not just me being a spammer. We always said that this was going to be a slow rollout with Podforge. We wanted to get our first 5 people, get it working, check all the systems out with these people, then do the next 5, and then we start to increase the price after that. So if you are looking at your content needs in your business and thinking, yeah, I'd like some of that, I'd love to have a chat. It's a fabulous thing to do, and I promise you it will make you feel brilliant, and the results you can get from your podcast are sensational. On that note, I will bid you good day, and I will see you again tomorrow, or maybe no, it's Saturday tomorrow. Maybe I'll do a live on Saturday. Who knows? See how I feel. Take care, guys. Have a good one.